August 23rd, 1997, 6:47 p.m., the Ritz Hotel, Paris. Diana sat at the vanity in her suite, fastening a pearl earring as she watched the sunset paint the Parisian sky in shades of rose and gold. In 8 days, she would be dead. But tonight she was radiant. Tonight she was in love. And tonight she was about to make a decision that would change everything. Her phone rang. She picked it up, already smiling because she knew who it would be. "I'm downstairs," the voice said. Not Dodi's voice. Someone else. Someone the world didn't know about. Someone who had been waiting patiently for months, believing that Diana would finally choose him. 5 minutes, Diana whispered. "Meet me at the service entrance." Same as always. She hung up and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was different from the one who had married. Charles 16 years ago, stronger, wiser, ready to finally choose love over duty. But what Diana didn't know, what she couldn't have known as she prepared to slip away for this secret meeting, was that palace. Intelligence had been tracking this relationship for 8 months, that they had photographs, recordings, evidence of a romance that terrified them far more than Dodi ever could. Because this man wasn't just a passing affair. This was the man Diana was planning to marry. And if the palace couldn't stop it, the consequences would be catastrophic. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because to understand who this man was and why Diana's relationship with him was considered such a threat, we have to go back to the winter when Diana, exhausted from failed relationships and public scrutiny, met someone who saw her not as a princess, but as a woman worthy of real love. Back to when she met Alexander, December 14th, 1996, 8:32 p.m., a private art gallery. Mayfair. Diana stood before a painting, an abstract piece in blues and greys that somehow captured the loneliness she'd been feeling for months. The gallery opening was small, intimate, attended by art collectors and philanthropists. She'd come alone, desperate for an evening away from photographers and palace drama. "Melancholic, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. She turned to see a man in his late 40s, distinguished with dark hair graying at the temples, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that suggested wealth but not ostentation. His eyes were kind, genuinely kind, not the calculating kindness she'd learned to recognize in people who wanted something from her. "I find it beautiful," Diana replied. "So do I. I think that's what makes it melancholic. Beautiful things that capture sadness." He extended his hand. "Alexander Kensington, art dealer, philanthropist when the mood strikes. And yes, I know who you are, but I promise to be spectacularly unimpressed by titles." Diana laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. "That's refreshing." They talked for 2 hours, about art and music and the weight of expectations. He told her about his work, curating collections for private clients, about splitting his time between London and New York, about losing his wife to cancer 5 years earlier and learning to live with the shape of absence. Diana found herself saying things she rarely admitted, about the loneliness of being the most photographed woman in the world while feeling utterly invisible, about wanting to be known, truly known, by someone who didn't want anything from her except her company. As the gallery emptied, Alexander walked her to her car. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" he asked. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere you can just be Diana, not the princess." Diana hesitated. She'd been hurt so many times, used so many times, but something in his eyes made her want to take the risk. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that very much." What neither of them knew was that a photographer, not paparazzi, but palace intelligence, had documented the entire evening from across the street. By morning, a file would land on the desk of the Queen's private secretary with a single word written across the top: monitor. Because Alexander Kensington, though he seemed perfect, had one quality that made him absolutely unacceptable. He was an American citizen. And if Diana married an American and moved to New York, she would take her sons for extended visits. She would influence them away from the palace. She would create a parallel life that the monarchy couldn't control. That could not be allowed. January 7th, 1997, 10:23. p.m. Alexander's London flat. Diana sat curled on Alexander's sofa, her shoes off, a glass of wine in her hand, watching snow fall outside the window. They'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks, carefully, privately, in spaces where the world couldn't intrude. "Tell me something nobody knows about you," Alexander said. Diana thought for a moment. "I'm terrified of failure. Not in the grand sense. I'm not worried about failing at charity work or public appearances. I'm terrified of failing at love, of choosing the wrong person again, of being used again." Alexander set down his wine and took her hand. "Diana, I need you to understand something. I didn't plan this. I didn't come to that gallery hoping to meet you. I'm not trying to rescue you or fix you or use your fame for anything. I'm just a man who met an extraordinary woman and wants to know her better. Everyone says things like that. I know, and I can't prove I'm different except by showing you over time. But I can promise you this. I will never ask you to be anyone other than who you are. I will never use you for status or publicity. And if this becomes too complicated, if the pressure gets too much, I'll walk away before I hurt you. That's my promise." Diana felt tears prick her eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness. Because somehow, despite everything you've been through, you've remained kind yourself. That's rare, Diana. That's precious." That night, for the first time in years, Diana allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this. Could have love that was real and uncomplicated and based on who she was rather than what she represented. But the palace was already moving. 2 days later, Alexander received a visit at his office. A man in a grey suit with credentials that identified him as being from cultural relations. The conversation was brief and polite. "Mr. Kensington, we understand you've been spending time with the Princess of Wales. We wanted to make you aware of certain sensitivities. Her Royal Highness is in a delicate position legally and emotionally. Any relationship that becomes public could damage her standing with her sons, complicate custody arrangements, and create international diplomatic issues." "Are you threatening me?" Alexander asked calmly. "Not at all. We're simply making you aware of the reality. You seem like a reasonable man, a man who wouldn't want to cause harm to someone he cares about." After the visitor left, Alexander sat in his office for a long time. Then he called Diana. "We need to talk." "They know." February 14th, 1997, 11:47 p.m., Kensington Palace. Diana and Alexander sat in her private sitting room, the door locked, speaking in hushed tones, even though they were alone. "They came to me again," Alexander said. "This time they were less subtle. They implied that my business dealings could face unexpected scrutiny, that international transactions might become complicated, that visas could be delayed." Diana's hands clenched into fists. "This is exactly what they did with everyone. They destroyed my relationship with James Hewitt. They made sure Oliver Hoare was too afraid to continue seeing me. They sabotage anyone who makes me happy. Diana, I need to ask you something serious. If we continue this, if we make this real, are you prepared for war? Because that's what this will be. War with the palace, war with the press, war with everyone who benefits from you staying in your designated role." Diana looked at him for a long moment. "What if we left? What if we just left England? You have a home in New York. I could do my charity work from there. William and Harry could visit during holidays. We could build a life away from all of this." Alexander's expression was conflicted. "They're your sons, Diana, your boys. Could you really leave them? They're at boarding school most of the year anyway, and they're getting older. William is 15, Harry 13. In a few years, they'll be making their own choices about where to spend their time. But right now, while I still have a chance at happiness, shouldn't I take it? What about your royal duties? Your title? I'll give it all up. Every bit of it. I'll just be Diana Spencer again. We can get married quietly, live in New York, and I can still do charity work. I can still be a mother. But I can also be a wife to someone who actually loves me." Alexander pulled her close. "If we do this, we do it right. We wait until the divorce is final. We plan carefully. We make sure William and Harry understand. And we accept that there will be consequences." "I accept them," Diana whispered. I'm ready to fight for this, for us. What Diana didn't know was that her sitting room had been bugged 3 weeks earlier, that every word of this conversation was being recorded and would be transcribed and delivered to the Queen's private secretary by morning, and that the decision had already been made. Diana and Alexander could not be allowed to marry. May 3rd, 1997, 2:17 p.m., Highgrove House. Charles sat in his study, reading a confidential memo from Palace Intelligence. The subject line read, "Diana, Kensington situation urgent." The memo detailed Diana's relationship with Alexander, the depth of it, the seriousness of it, her stated intention to move to New York and marry him. After the divorce was finalized in August, Charles felt a complicated mixture of emotions: relief that Diana had found happiness, guilt that he couldn't be the one to provide it, and terror at what this would mean for William and Harry. He picked up the phone and called his mother. "We need to intervene," the Queen said without preamble. "If Diana moves to America and takes the boys for extended periods, it creates a constitutional nightmare. William is second in line to the throne. He cannot be raised partially in New York by an American stepfather. What do you propose?" "We make it clear to Mr. Kensington that continuing this relationship will result in consequences he won't enjoy, and we make sure Diana understands that her access to the boys will be limited if she chooses to leave the country." "Mother, we can't threaten to take her sons from her." "We're not threatening, Charles. We're explaining reality. The custody arrangement is favorable to her now because she's remained in England and maintained her royal duties. If she abandons those responsibilities, the arrangement can be renegotiated. Her lawyers will explain this to her." Charles felt sick. This will destroy her. "Then she should choose differently." "We didn't create this situation, Charles." "She did." The call ended, and Charles sat in the gathering darkness, wondering if there was any way to protect Diana from what was coming. But he already knew the answer. June 15th, 1997, 9:34 a.m. A law office, central London. Diana sat across from her attorney, Anthony Julius, as he explained the situation with careful, painful precision. "The palace's position is clear. If you relocate to the United States, even part-time, they will petition for modified custody arrangements. They'll argue that William and Harry should remain primarily in England for educational and constitutional reasons. You could end up seeing them only during school holidays." Diana felt the room tilt. "They can't do that. I'm their mother. You're also the former wife of the heir to the throne, and they are princes of the realm. The palace has resources and legal standing that most people don't. And Diana, I need to be frank with you. Public opinion will not be on your side if you're seen as choosing a new husband over your sons." "I'm not choosing—" "I know that. But that's how it will be framed. Diana abandons princes for American art dealer. The tabloids will crucify you." Diana stood and walked to the window, looking out at London, the city she'd called home since she was 19. The gilded cage she'd tried so hard to escape. "So my choice is to stay in England alone or leave and lose my sons. I'm afraid that's the reality of your position." Diana turned back to him. "What if Alexander moves here? What if we marry and stay in London?" Julius hesitated. "That's more complicated. The palace would prefer you didn't remarry at all. But if you did, they'd want extensive control over the arrangements. Where you live, how you're presented publicly, what access your husband has to William and Harry. So I'd trade one cage for another." "Yes." Diana left the office feeling numb. That evening, she met Alexander at a private restaurant in South Kensington. "They're going to fight this," she said without preamble. "They'll threaten to limit my access to the boys if I move to New York, and if you move here, they'll make our lives miserable with restrictions and surveillance." Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we'll find another way. We'll wait. We'll be patient. William is only 3 years from legal adulthood. Harry 4 years. We can wait." 3 years, Diana repeated. "Can you wait 3 years?" "For you?" "I'd wait 10. Diana felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I'm so tired of fighting. I'm so tired of them controlling every aspect of my life." "Then stop fighting for now. We'll be together quietly, carefully, and when the time is right, when your sons are old enough to understand, we'll make it public. We'll do this right." Diana nodded, wanting desperately to believe that patience would be rewarded, that love could survive in secret. But she was beginning to understand a terrible truth. The palace would never allow her this happiness. Not in 3 years, not ever. Because she wasn't just Diana Spencer anymore. She was a living symbol of everything the monarchy feared: authentic emotion, genuine love, the possibility that there was life beyond duty. And symbols can't be allowed to choose their own path. August 10th, 1997, 3:47 p.m. Alexander's New York apartment. Alexander stood by the window of his Manhattan apartment, phone pressed to his ear, listening to Diana's voice break as she spoke. "I need to do something, Alexander. I need to show the palace that they can't control me forever. So I'm going to be photographed with Dodi. I'm going to let them think there's a romance. It'll take the pressure off us. They'll focus on him instead." "Diana, that's dangerous." "What if people believe it? What if it becomes the narrative? Let them believe it. Let the palace think I've moved on to someone they can control, someone whose family they have leverage over through business dealings. Meanwhile, you and I will continue as we are, quietly until the boys are older." "I don't like this." "I don't either. But I'm out of options, Alexander. If we go public now, I lose my sons. If we hide forever, we lose ourselves. This is the only way to buy us time. When will I see you again?" "Soon, I promise. After this trip to Paris with Dodi, I'll come to New York. We'll have a week together. Just us, and we'll figure out the next step." "I love you, Diana." "I love you too. More than you know." She hung up, and Alexander stood in the New York sunshine, feeling the first tendrils of dread curling around his heart. Something was wrong. He couldn't name it, couldn't identify it, but something felt terribly, terribly wrong. August 23rd, 1997, 6:47 p.m., the Ritz Hotel, Paris. We return to this moment. Diana fastening her pearl earring, the phone call, the service entrance. She slipped out of the hotel, wearing sunglasses and a headscarf, her heart racing with the familiar thrill of escape. Alexander was waiting in a rented car 2 blocks away. She slid into the passenger seat, and he pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. "I've missed you," she whispered. 3 weeks too long. They drove to a small cafe on the left bank, one of those anonymous places where even famous faces can disappear into the crowd. They sat outside, watching people pass, pretending for an hour that they were just a couple in love in Paris. "I've made a decision," Diana said. "After this trip, I'm telling the boys about us. William is old enough to understand. I'll explain everything, why we've kept it secret, what the palace has been doing, what our plans are." "Are you sure?" "No, but I can't keep living in fear. I can't keep hiding the one good thing in my life. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. We tell William and Harry, we tell the world, and we accept whatever comes." Alexander studied her face. "You know what will come. The palace will go to war. The press will be vicious. Your relationship with your sons might be damaged. I know, but if I don't fight for this, if I don't fight for us, then what was any of it for? All the pain, all the struggle to escape that marriage, all the work to find myself again? I won't spend the rest of my life hiding the man I love because the palace is afraid of losing control." "When?" "After I get back to London, September 1st. I'll sit down with William and Harry and tell them everything. And then, if you're still willing, I'd like you to meet them, properly, as the man I'm planning to marry." Alexander felt his eyes burn with tears. "I would be honored." They stayed at the cafe until sunset, making plans and dreaming of futures that felt suddenly impossibly close. When Diana finally returned to the Ritz, she felt lighter than she had in months. She had 8 days left to live, and she had no idea that palace, intelligence had photographed her entire meeting with Alexander, that by morning those photographs would be on the Queen's desk with a memo recommending immediate action to prevent public disclosure of relationship. That forces were already moving to ensure Diana never made it to September 1st. August 31st, 1997, 12:23 am, Pont de l'Alma Tunnel, Paris. The Mercedes entered the tunnel at high speed. 3 minutes later, Diana was dying in the wreckage, whispering words the first responders couldn't quite make out. Some reported she said, "My boys." Some said she asked about Dodi. But one paramedic, who was silenced by official investigators and never gave another interview, claimed Diana's last clear words were, "Tell Alexander I'm sorry." By 4 a.m., Diana was dead. By 6 a.m., palace officials were in Diana's Kensington Palace apartment, seizing her personal effects. They found letters from Alexander, photographs, plane tickets to New York, dated for September 5th, a notebook where she'd written wedding vows. All of it was classified, locked away, hidden. Alexander, watching the news in his New York apartment, felt his world end. He tried to fly to London for the funeral, but was advised by palace officials that his presence would be inappropriate and unwelcome. He wasn't allowed to mourn publicly, wasn't allowed to reveal their relationship, wasn't allowed to say goodbye. The world mourned Diana as the people's princess, as the tragic fairy tale figure, as Charles's ex-wife and Dodi's romantic interest. Almost no one knew about the American art dealer who had loved her quietly and planned to marry her in secret. Almost no one knew that. Diana had been 8 days away from telling her sons about her plan to remarry and build a new life. Almost no one knew that the palace had been tracking her relationship and considering it their most serious threat. Almost no one. September 6th, 1997, Westminster Abbey, London. Alexander sat in the very last pew wearing dark glasses, anonymous among the crowd of mourners. He'd flown to London despite the warnings, unable to stay away. As Elton John sang "Candle in the Wind" as William and Harry walked behind their mother's coffin, Alexander wept. Not the controlled tears of someone watching a public tragedy, but the broken sobs of a man who had lost everything. After the service, as crowds dispersed, a palace official approached him. "Mr. Kensington, a word." They walked to a quiet corner. "We're aware of your relationship with the princess. We're sorry for your loss. But you need to understand that relationship cannot become public. Not now, not ever. It would complicate the narrative, upset her sons, and serve no purpose except to create scandal. She loved me. I loved her. That deserves to be known. What deserves to be known and what is beneficial to know are different things. Diana's legacy is being carefully curated to honor her memory and protect her sons. Your involvement would only complicate that. So I'm supposed to pretend she meant nothing to me? We're asking you to consider what Diana would have wanted. She protected William and Harry above everything. Would she want them learning about a secret relationship from newspaper headlines? Would she want their grief complicated by questions about their mother's private life? Alexander stared at the official, hating him but unable to deny the logic. If you remain silent, there are people who would appreciate your discretion, professionally and financially. You're trying to buy my silence about the woman I loved. We're trying to protect her sons, as she would have wanted. Alexander walked away without responding. For 3 days he stayed in London, visiting the places he and Diana had been together, saying goodbye to a ghost. On the 4th day, he flew back to New York. He never spoke publicly about Diana, never sold his story, never revealed the letters or photographs or evidence of their planned future. He kept his silence for 26 years. Today, Alexander Kensington is 74 now, living quietly in Connecticut. He never married, never had children, never found another love that came close to what he'd had with Diana. In a private safe in his home, he keeps a box. Inside are Diana's letters, photographs of them together, the wedding vows she'd written, plane tickets that were never used, and one item that would shock the world if it was ever revealed, a letter from Diana, dated August 22nd, 1997, 9 days before her death. The letter speaks of her plans to announce their relationship, her hope that William and Harry would understand and accept Alexander, her dreams of a quiet wedding in New York and a life split between charity, work, and simple happiness. "I've spent so long being who everyone else needed me to be," she wrote. "With you, I can finally just be Diana, just myself. That's the greatest gift you've given me. And I will spend the rest of my life showing you how grateful I am for it." The rest of her life was 8 days. Some people close to Alexander say he's writing a memoir, that after decades of silence, he's finally ready to tell the truth about Diana's last love, about the plans they made, about the palace conspiracy to keep them apart. Others say he'll take the secret to his grave, honoring what he believes Diana would have wanted. The truth, like so many truths about Diana, remains locked away, hidden, waiting. But this much is certain. Diana died, planning to marry again, to choose love over duty, to build a life with a man the world never knew existed. And the palace made sure no one ever found out. So here we stand at the end of this story, having walked through Diana's last great love, a relationship conducted in shadows, a future planned in secret, a happiness stolen before it could be claimed. What do you think really happened? Was Diana's death truly an accident? Or was it convenient timing for a palace that couldn't control her choices? Should Alexander tell his story, or should he protect Diana's memory by remaining silent? Share your thoughts below. This is where we honor Diana's right to love freely, to choose her own path, to be more than just a symbol or a princess. This is where we demand that her full story, all of it, finally be told. If this story moved you, please subscribe. There are more hidden truths waiting, stories about Diana's final weeks, her desperate attempts to find happiness, her plans for a future she never got to live, stories the palace worked for decades to erase. Together, we'll make sure every chapter of her story is finally revealed. Together, we'll refuse to let them rewrite history.